Good evening, everybody. Uh, Good evening, and welcome to the 21st Wisdom Talk. It's our continuous journey to explore wisdom. It's our journey to discover and democratize wisdom. And I'm very happy to be joined today by a person I deeply admire, love, respect, a real brother, and a co traveler, Kiran. Welcome, Kiran, to the Wisdom
Thank
Talk.
you, thank you. I'm very happy also to be here.
So just to introduce Kiran for people who don't know him, which is less more likely people know him already, is somebody who's been over the last 25 years a relationship coach, a CXO coach, leadership facilitator, a contributor to multiple communities and visionaries. After this whole journey of 25 years, Kiran's insight was that his work is to unearth the artistry of the heart. Uh, as a result of which he found artistry and artistry, which maybe we'll go into, uh, and to help people unravel their heart song. He brings alive the connection with body, nature, music, and more in his work with individuals and groups, and occasionally writes at his blog, coevolvewithkiran.com. And yeah, I think as I start this conversation with you, Kiran, I'm very mindful of seeding the intent that you have said that this conversation about learning would not be complete if we're not learning together. And therefore, rather than a wisdom talk, I guess I want to evoke the spirit of a co-learning space, and trusting that our space opens up something fresh.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So, Kiran, as the tradition goes, our first question is always, what is wisdom according to you? And
Mm,
I think in the context of our topic today about learning, can really wisdom be learned and taught? Has it to be acquired? What's been your journey in understanding wisdom and meeting a lot of wise people, which I'm sure you have over your journey?
yeah, I mean, I got a heads up on this first question from Ashok. So I was the first word that came to me when I saw the question was embodiment. Because there is so much knowledge out there. There is so much that is in the field of the known concepts, theories, uh, and at the subtlest level, even so-called spiritual truths, right? And yet we often experience in our own lives, yours and mine, and everybody we encounter in the human realm, a gap between knowing and doing. And for me, wisdom is about congruence, integrity, and how are we bringing what we know alive? We are living it, you know. So I feel that wisdom is something that sets you free, like truth, and Swami Beyondananda said that truth also upsets you free. So sometimes wisdom is upsetting. And also, so because these three words somehow, really, like I feel, are synonymous with wisdom for me: love, truth, and freedom. Love without a story, truth which is fresh, always here, and that which brings aliveness in the body, mind, and the heart.
I was curious about wisdom upsets you in free in the sense that I'm curious about your experiences of wisdom coming in maybe with an upset or with a disruption of sorts.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've had many disruptions, because we have traveled together. But the most profound disruptions have been in the field of love, breakups, because my work is in the field of intimacy, relationships, and perhaps it's almost like to prepare me, for that. So I had a broken marriage of 17 years. We parted peacefully, but it was a difficult marriage. Then another relationship, and so on. And I find that when something unexpected happens, and breaks you before it makes you, So sometimes a breakthrough can just appear like that out of nowhere, out of joy, but more often I've seen it happens out of some like a sense of loss of some kind, like a letting go. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the ultimate wisdom I think we've talked about is when even the most profound truth of that I had understood of freedom and awakening also got disrupted. So I feel that was so far the ultimate disruption. Who knows what lies ahead?
True. I also got in touch with the fact that the word breakthrough has break at the start of it, breakthrough. So something's breaking perhaps for something new to be born.
Completely.
And I guess life keeps doing it all the time. But I guess we keep planning and preserving things, and then life comes, breaks it, and breaks it open, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And pretty much, therefore, this whole subject that we are exploring today of learning together is so relevant, because wisdom is also when true learning, unlearning, beyond learning, and not just at an intellectual level, like something happens in the muscles, in the bones, something shifts, that kind of a thing. We are not belittling the intellectual part of the learning that has its place, the emotional aspect, but something, I think the deepest is happening at the body level somehow. Yeah.
How do I tap into the learner's stance? What stance do I take so that this container of learning together gets created?
In one word, I would really say wonder. I mean, if we can truly pause and wonder, because normally slowing down to encounter life at the speed that it is unfolding, because often we are living at the speed of the mind, isn't it? So what is the speed of life? And with that comes the quality of wonder, which has a very different quality than thinking. That's why I said blinking. And should we encounter a point at which there is a disruption, a difference in perspective, which we've often had, as you know, that can we slow down and truly look at bringing wonder not only to what we are discussing, but also bring attention to the how. Because located in the process of our exchange, lie the keys to discovering something fresh. I mean, we could keep discussing the content, which has its own beauty, but it's almost like, hey, let's pause and look. Are we wondering? Are we listening?
Yeah, even as you're saying this, it's evoking in me a slowness and a willingness to drop some of the questions and intents with which I'm approaching this to a more open stance.
Yeah.
Getting in touch with the feeling of safety, security, or just the willingness to embrace, ठीक है, देखते हैं, जो भी हो सो हो, के सरा सरा.
Yeah. How beautiful, no? Because if between us, Abhi, we've walked together for so long, and there is a deep friendship. I think friendship also is a space, a kind of an evocative ground in which a learning together can happen.
Definitely, yeah.
And I often say, and I often have seen that friendship as a fragrance, can it arrive in any relationship? Whether it's a parent and a child, a teacher and a student, something, something about a friendly connection sets open a safe space to explore.
What would be the essence of, sorry,
Go ahead, please go ahead. Yeah.
what would be the essence of friendliness? Like, I can imagine friendliness between us more easily
Yeah.
than, say, friendliness with my parents, for example.
Yeah.
What is the essential quality that, when present, you would say, "Haan, this friendliness hai"? Like, is it a felt experience? Is it? I don't know. I'm just also wondering with you, saying, "Kab bole ki haan isme," or how do I infuse something or allow it to be born?
Yes. I think I would come again, once again, to wonder and curiosity. Because when friendliness is not present, somewhere there isn't a kind of an appreciative exploration. Because, and sometimes, I mean, truth be told, the other is not willing to explore. Like I told you, some of the disruptions I've had, a few years back, one of my dearest friendships, Abhi, I think I've shared with you. And suddenly, he just wants to disconnect. And sometimes things which are broken can come together, like that. There's something in Japanese, no? Wo gold se cup ko join karke, and sometimes they don't, But in my heart, I can always keep the wonder alive, exploring that friendship that was and still is in the heart, So similarly, even with a parent, or with your boss in an organization, that inner exploration can continue, no? Yeah.
I wonder about invitations and the number of invitations one has to make, and maybe be willing for invitations to be declined on such a path. And what would it take to constantly keep inviting the spirit of friendship and inquiry in a world where a lot of people are perhaps better off just being safe or certain?
Absolutely. And particularly in today's world, at the pace at which, life at the pace of social media, one could say. I mean, we're so occupied, somehow. And it really takes a lot of doing, undoing, being, whatever you call, to just rest. And somehow learning together requires a restfulness. Also a certain kind of vulnerability, like that shayad I'm missing something here, I'm not seeing something here, I don't know, kind of a quality. And Abhi, one day this came to me, that what is treasured and measured in the world is expertise. No? So you have coaches and leaders and parents and teachers and lawyers and, I mean, what have you, but there is a certain premium on expertise, right? And the very nature of expertise is a certain pedestalizing, right? A hierarchy, if I could say hierarchizing, And I saw one day that the common denominator is learning. That if each of these people could be willing to learn, that whatever they are doing would somehow deepen and widen. But it's almost threatening sometimes to learn, isn't it?
What was the word hierarchy? What did you break it into?
I just said hierarchizing,
To hierarchize something.
Yeah. Like everything, we're so used to this kind of a non-level playing field.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the premium on certainty. Now, all of these have a place, hierarchy is not bad, it's required, expertise is required, certainty is required. But how tightly are we holding it?
I think they become sources of security, right? I mean, when I look back at myself right now in this moment, like look back, me look in, I'm with questions, I'm with agendas, I'm with a set direction to the conversation. I feel a commitment to the people who are listening in. I feel like we put out something, and it would be responsible. Like it's my responsibility to navigate conversations. And as I'm dropping those, I'm realizing that firstly, without dropping those, we'll not arrive at something truly fresh. It will still be a talk. So just getting mindful of dropping those and leaning in to uncertainty, right? Leaning into
Yes. And what I'm really liking is that there is an unhurriedness over here, no, Abhi? Like you seem to be comfortable with the pause. We're allowing that spaciousness in which something can emerge which is unexpected.
That's why they call it pregnant pause.
Pregnant pause. Yes. Yes, Tribhuvan. Happy to see you here.
Nice to see you. Hi.
Yeah. So one way I'm just wondering would to explore something, no, Abhi, as we have done in the past, is to truly bring something that is alive as a question, as a grappling, and almost like bring it out on the table. And I like to I have seen this, I have known this, I've experienced this, that what seems rather personal is often universal. So it in some way it lives in all of us to varying degrees, no?
Yeah, I think I'm still unraveling layers. I think one layer I'm unraveling is that I have a set of parameters that an insight has to meet before it qualifies as an insight or wisdom. Right? It's almost like an unconscious list of check boxes saying, I don't know, it has to sound profound, come from experience. I don't know, it's an unconscious checklist. And then therefore for me, even the question of did I learn anything? I mean, the space may just leave an energetic footprint that I can't abstract, but it may actually be deep learning, but it may not fit into my parameters of learning. So I'm also at one level now shedding what it must look like.
Yes. Beautiful. And one of the things I have seen is that true learning somehow, or deep learning at least, requires an engagement together to discover, explore, like going on a trek together. And there may be someone who's a more experienced trekker, let's say, who knows the terrain, but being willing to be surprised.
Yeah, in fact, for me, the distinction between a trek and a hike perhaps would be that the hike is on the road traveled already. A
Yeah.
trek maybe, just as a distinction that I'd make for myself would be, it is by its very nature a fresh exploration, because even if the road is same, you are different as
Yeah.
you go onto that path.
Yes.
And to that extent, therefore, even this illusion, I'm wondering about the illusion that somebody is more familiar with some terrains. How does that paradox sit with the idea of freshness? Right, that and both are true. It's true that some people are more familiar with certain terrains. At the same time, the true innocence of freshness means that I'm also kind of putting that familiarity not at the center, but kind of at the holding it at the background. Something like that.
Yeah. Completely.
But Kiran, so bringing this, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
So bringing this here and now, I'm also mindful that from time to time we may jump into leaps of abstraction. And what is then the practice of regrounding it here to where we are and into a space where that learning, like abstractions, don't start building on each other.
Yeah.
How do we be watchful of that?
Yeah. So, for example, since we talked about embodiment, it would be a good idea to just bring attention to our body and to our feelings, and to authentically share what is actually arising in this mind body feeling mechanism. For example, if I was to just tune in and sense in my body, I do notice that my head is a little heavy, and something in me is enjoying, in anticipation also, not anxious, but there is an edge, so all this is occurring here. What seems to be occurring for you, Abhi?
I definitely caught myself going on an intellectual flight as I spoke about the terrain and the trek and the walk hike distinction, and then bringing paradox. I could rapidly see how I climbed several stories and therefore maybe away from the moment. And then I could bring it back. So for me, at this moment, I'm present to the aliveness and the uncertainty. It almost seems like the two have to like coexist. I don't know. Certainty में aliveness एक अलग type के aliveness है, uncertainty वाली एक अलग type के aliveness है.
Yeah. It is a paradox.
I'm alive to the uncertainty वाला aliveness कि चलो देखते हैं क्या होता है.
No, absolutely. But what I'm curious about is I noticed something right now in what you said, which is that you noticed yourself going into abstraction, but the fact that you noticed it and you brought it here, brought us more present to what is here, right? It's precious. And therefore, I want to bring here that aspect that I have discovered, in this learning together, if I can call it intent process, that periodically, if one could just helicopter what's happening, which is in a sense what we do, notice what's happening here, inside us, between us, it becomes precious both to step back and see it not from the physical eyes, but from the eyes of awareness. So I'm also wondering if, there's something about taking a risk to, like, dare to bear, like if there is something not as a strategy or a should, but like really. maybe I want to share this with you. In fact, something that happened as an example, of very fresh, and let's see if that brings up something. I was coaching somebody who had come through a friend, and she's very successful in some sense, but also, like all of us, have been through whatever traumas, and then somehow, in some ways, many of us are little constricted and not able to fully sing our song, so to speak. And in one of the sessions, I was really feeling stuck, Abhi. And I told her that. I said, we don't seem to be moving at all. And I'm not wanting to run away from here. Let's stay here, in this stuckness, in this density, in this quicksand, in this, and the hour plus got over, and seemingly nothing had moved. But of course, we never know, because there are layers, and you sit with it, and just the willingness to sit in that fire. And then somehow I felt, sometimes I just experiment with my coaching, and I said, let's do 3 days in a row, 15-minute sessions in the morning. Okay. And this morning I spoke to her. The time, the place, the context, the duration, everything, playing with that. And something really broke open today. I've had 3 sessions with her, and it was like really, something was, and she said, I have several musical instruments, this, that, and I've not been playing them, and I paint, and I so I said, okay, here is where, is a doorway. And as I became curious and genuinely appreciative, of the fact that she used to play instruments and something has got blocked. She used to paint. I asked her to send some paintings, take pictures of the music and instruments. And I told her, about how one of my teachers would say that, hey, you must sing and dance. And I said, are you willing to do that right now in the next few minutes? And I could see there was a resistance, so I didn't push it. I said, see what you are willing to do. And she said, maybe I will write, And as a doorway opened up for her, something opened up for me as I looked at her as a mirror, and I saw that, hey, maybe I need to sing and dance a little more. And so sometimes in these kind of learning together conversations, I then go back and experiment with living what the other person is finding a struggle to live, or living it a little deeper.
Sure. Yeah. True. I mean, in one way, the unsaid secret of the facilitation, coaching, and helping professions is that a lot of us enter into these professions also to do our own work and as a part of our own spiritual journeys, right?
Always teaching what we need to learn.
Yes.
Because if we don't need to learn, we pretty much stop teaching it. I mean, in a way, the Tao journey ended,
Just for context, I think to others that Tao, spelled as TAO, was Kiran's work for several decades, a couple of decades. And that journey in itself, the Tao, the how, and the process, I think I don't know if it ended or it got reborn as artistry. In fact, this is a good time to maybe go into a little bit of artistry, kya hai, heart song, kya hai. I gather it's very close to your heart, dear kind of thing. So maybe a bit around, and how does one kind of tune into their heart song? What is the pathway to it?
Yeah. Uh, so I will also link it with learning together because it is very linked. Uh, so, Ravi, you know this, and I want to share this. A conversation that we had once, not very long, less than a year back, and I feel I have often grappled with distraction, ADHD, and all of that, and you challenged me to say like, hey, have you got it diagnosed? And I said, I've read a lot, and a lot of it matches, and all of that. And why I bring this is because in some ways, people tell me, and I've seen that I've touched thousands of lives in these 25 years due to my work, and many multipliers, coaches, facilitators. But in some ways, I have been not successful by the worldly yardsticks, money, etc. And so one day I said, when one of my coaches asked me, hey, who would Kiran be without the Tao? And I said, whoa, that was an identity. And then when I looked in, I saw that in my heart, I'm an artist, not in a conventional sense, although I've been learning to sing for the last 2 years, and that's opened up something. But something about the way I do my work has a touch of artistry, and then I saw that the artistry was of the heart, and that's what made it artistry.
Mm-hmm.
And the new elements which came into artistry, since you asked me to speak about it, was body much more, as I integrated with my own body and well-being, health, artistry. I started singing. Recently I've been looking at integrating dance, movement, kind of stuff, and nature. There is this beautiful saying by somebody, some of us must have heard, certainly you have, where if you used to go in the tribes to the medicine man or woman complaining that you were depressed, or they would ask 3 or 4 questions, when did you stop singing, when did you stop dancing, when did you stop getting enchanted by stories? So that particular quotation and my own experience, brought in this whole artistry construct, alive. And interestingly, I think Ojas, right? Ojas, do you know Ojas?
I don't, but I'm also just mindful that energetically we're switching to an interview energy, or that's what I'm sensing in,
Right.
and I'm willing to be called wrong.
Yeah.
But I suddenly, as you were sharing, sense that I moved my stance into an interviewer, and I think we naturally flowed into a let me talk about. So just bringing that back.
And returning to the intention of learning together.
Yeah.
And I would say that suddenly I want to expand this possibility that even though the people who are watching us are not participating and this is an interaction between us, that if we just expand the context and the intent, that even in their silence and in their listening, might they be learning together with us? And Abhi, let me just tie up what I was saying and then come back, because you asked me about artistry. I just need to bring that to a completion. So how learning together comes is that these 2 lines touch me very deeply, that we live so that we may learn to love, and we love so that we may learn to live, right? And in that interaction, in the depths of living, loving, learning, the artistry of learning together is very much at the very center of this. And I want to pay attention now to the chemistry, which is a key component of learning together. Like there is a certain chemistry and ease between us, and therefore we have challenged each other at times, hasn't that challenge hasn't significantly arisen in this conversation, but we are open to it, but I like the way you're constantly bringing attention, helicoptering, and so Abhi, what do you feel, because we are close to 35 minutes into the conversation and we have 25 more minutes, that what might be interesting to explore, dive into in this balanced time? Any thoughts?
I think one immediate thing was I do acknowledge the longing and the intent to bring others into the conversation, which we have set some time after
Yeah,
8 o'clock to
after
do
the
that.
1 hour. Yeah.
And meanwhile, like you said, in silence, just to honor also the process of this talk and how
Yeah.
we like to do that. And just also, I think maybe a pause. I think that's what's coming to me, and then allowing something to emerge from there, because I'm very full right now. What all could we speak about? And I don't know if that's the right space from where to suggest something.
Yeah.
So maybe we intentionally pause to see and what arises. I think, is that fine?
Absolutely.
I think what is coming to me, or would you like to extend the pause, Kiran? I can see you're still in
No,
the
please
pause.
go ahead. No, I'm
I
very
think,
open.
yeah, just the habit of the mind, right? It almost feels like my mind is constantly doing its thing and almost like anti-learning, because it keeps slipping back into its learned ways and habits and so on. And I
Yeah.
also want to contextualize this for my experience. One, with working with young people, two, with people in a social space, three, with facilitators, that what we habitually do for about 15, 20 years really shapes our ways of looking at things. So when I work with young people, for example, they come with the traditional college school mental model and project the whole thing onto the space, or maybe given that you and I both have been a couple of decades into the facilitation space, I wonder about how the natural habit of the mind is to move into certain stances. And so to me, I think what was coming was just the habit of the mind, right? Even as we went into an interview mode, where you started sharing about something and I started listening, which was also legit as a form of learning. At the
Yeah.
same time, it's like how habitual it is to keep slipping back into familiar territory,
Yes.
and how much of an act of discipline perhaps it is, or courage, to stay into the unknown. So just, yeah, that's what I'm wondering about in this moment, like
Yeah.
how are habits of mind interfering even in this conversation and in general in learning.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, in this moment, I'm just feeling like I had prepared some notes. I'm just wanting to close that and just see what arrives in the raw.
Sure.
Um, these two lines are favorite. Sell your cleverness, buy bewilderment. How might we be wilder, more raw, more here? Abhi, I'm just wondering with you and just asking actually, that would it be interesting to pick up something that is a shared exploration? I could even use the word struggle or grappling, whatever. The word is not important so much. for example, we have spoken about money, at times. And that also seems to be a very alive question for many who follow their heart. Their relationship with money and how it interplays with their relationship with time. How do we spend our time? So I'm just wondering if we could contextualize and discover together something from a real lived, I don't know whether that would be interesting, rather than just the learning together as a subject, where we bring some concreteness to it. We could pick up something else. It doesn't have to be money, but
yeah. I was getting curious about a more meta thing of saying that, okay, let's say I want to learn about money, or that I'm grappling with money time conversation. How do I go about the whole process of first acknowledging my grappling, finding support, inviting people in, who are the people, the what and the how of learning that we kind of set aside. So I'm saying, instead of only looking at the specific kind of, say, money and time, saying what is the meta process by which you or anybody who wants to learn, what is, how does that process even occur? Like, I feel there's so many areas where unless life pushes me, I don't even realize there's something to be learned, because I'm happily cruising along. And when that comes in, how do I recognize that there is a crack for learning? What is it that is to be learned? How do I think most people are not even self-learners in that way, or even to identify what I need to learn itself is such a task. So I'm just curious about, in your experience, how does one, and that would be valuable for people who are listening in also, because I'm sure each one has a different grappling.
Yes.
But how do I learn to deal with it?
Yeah, I feel that's a wonderful question. And I want to just present, since now you asked for the how, and that's the subject of today, just the nichor, the essence of my learning in this. And then after sharing that in the last 15 minutes, we could actually attempt to apply that, like us learning together with you taking the lead or I taking the lead, but it'll be nice if one of us take the lead, as a coach, but use this kind of framework, as it were. So what I discovered, Abhi, is, I think you're familiar, I don't know, Kajal, somebody, that essentially learning together, and I would say any human interaction for that matter, relationship, any relationship, I've seen requires these 5 dimensions of communication, deep listening, authentic speaking, questioning from wonder, silence, the pause, and appreciation. This is just something that I've brought together as a framework, right? So keeping these 5 so-called skills at a skill level, right? And then using them in this process, which is what I call the learning together process, which is initially through gentle questioning and pausing, we take a deep dive into something that we want to explore. So one person is questioning, either of us, and the other person is responding, but we come to a place where even the one who seems to be leading or coaching can also bring up something. So that's a deep dive. Right? I'm giving you elements, and then they need not be sequential. Out of the deep dive, there is something freshly that is revealed. Something opens up, right? When we are exploring something. And after that revelation, the third dimension is learning together, which means that supposing I'm coaching you, just let's take, or you're coaching me, whatever, there'll be something that will arise, and in that learning together phase, we're looking at that issue not as only belonging to you, but as a human challenge that exists. And let's say me as a coach will also vulnerably reveal how that arises for me, or how it has lived for me, and out of that, then that distinction or boundary between learner and coach or teacher, begins to vanish when it's a conversation. And after that, we helicopter, and see, hey, what was happening over here? Not the content of the process. And finally, something may emerge as the next step, what we take forward, insight, etc.
Yeah. I think before we do that, I also want to distinguish this because it's so radically different from conventional learning as it is understood, where the listening is typically downloading and not deep listening because it shows up as an abstract idea, not really grounded in experience. The teacher or the person teaching is not necessarily speaking authentically, but evangelizing and being vulnerable. Questions are not asked out of curiosity, but to test knowledge. And pauses hardly happen. Appreciation is reverse in the sense that the critical lens is so internalized. Even as you were speaking, my first thing was, okay, what am I not good at out of these, right? Like the unconscious sense of that. So I just want to, I think what you or we are on to is a very radically different way of learning. Which is learning from the space, not from the textbook, not from something stale, but something fresh. And I think I'm up for it.
And the interesting thing, Abhi, is that when we are learning from the space in a subtle way, that can also become a concept, and hey, only space. I remember how when we were in a men's group, the leaderless thing became a big deal, and then we realized, hey, somebody needed to lead at times. So similarly, some giving may come. I'm not opposed to that. Giving some. But ultimately, it's in service of learning together and discovery. What is needed in the moment. So, are you saying that you're up for me leading or coaching, or you will coach me? Either way, I'm okay. Because I remember in one program I was conducting, I got one of the participants to coach me, and it was brilliant, because ultimately it's learning together, you see.
I think the coach-coachee distinction eventually disappearing to me makes me much more light about whoever initiates.
Yeah, exactly.
And leads with a question.
Yeah. But it helps to also have that boundary to get going, and then some merging may happen. But so it's good that there is somebody who's leading, coaching, and somebody who's learning, but eventually both end up learning.
Sure.
And the interesting thing is we have only about 10 minutes, but a lot can happen in 10 minutes. Or not, we don't know.
Sure, let's hop in maybe. So let's start with a question you're holding. Maybe I'm feeling like let's begin with a grappling that you may have.
Okay. So then I'm willing to be primarily in a learning mode, and then but just lightly keep the deep diving and all of that. Somewhere it'll come into the thing, and the last 2-3 minutes we'll just helicopter. That's important. So what
sorry, before you just share, Kiran, just we listen deeply, go in, hit a point if we do, and from there we kind of learn together and helicopter, right? That's roughly what we're.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's.
So what am I grappling with? Many things, Rabi. The only difference is that very often that grappling is not troubling me so much as it used to somehow. But the grappling is there. And sometimes it also gets troublesome, but more or less it's kind of. But if I was to pick up something, I would say why don't I pick up something in which you are much more accomplished, I would say, at least in the lived experience of it. The field of intimate relationship, where I have fallen often and, got injured, so to speak. And I'm wondering, what is it that, although a lot has shifted, I mean, even money, everything. But I want to explore this now, that is there a blind spot, which intellectually I see, but I want to bring light into something so that it opens up something for us, for me. Yeah. And the specificity of that is that there is often a fear to commit, to take the deep dive, because when I have, there has been a breakdown, a wounding, surfacing. And somebody, of course, said that love is about you keep breaking, and all of that, but still.
I'm wondering about what's a shared blind spot, maybe, because if I enter from the expert position, I'll pretty much be negating all that we're setting out to do. So I'm happy to co-wonder.
Yeah, and that co-wondering, some question may arise in you or in me also, so that we are entering into that space.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, what is arising is if something's happening repeatedly, I'm wondering if are you or whoever is in question being hurt in newer ways or the same ways. There's a pattern to this. Like if each time you're getting hurt in newer ways, eventually I feel you'll exhaust the number of ways in which you can be hurt, and then there is. So I'm wondering whether there's a pattern to the brokenness and the hurtness, and if there is a pattern, then there is something there. If there isn't a pattern, then to me it's progress, right? Because you're being hurt in newer ways or erring. So I'm curious about that.
Yeah. I feel there is something always very fresh, and I would say that the more recent ones have been not so deep, I would say. Of course, they've been shorter. I mean, it hasn't been like a very intimate friendship, but it has been a deep friendship, which suddenly, like a few days back, somebody just. And for me, the blind spot often has been about boundaries. And strangely, in an intimate relationship, it's about the dissolution of boundaries, but also a respecting.
I think what's coming to me is that the act of making invitations, which you are gifted with, and you are the beckoner pretty much. I think on the other end of being on the other end of that, like I think for this conversation, what was coming to me was that we heard many times about learning together versus being in a conversation only between us. And for me to hold that boundary, if I have to I have to think about it. I had to really hold that boundary. And not take your beckoning or your invitations to heart, saying that a decline of the invitation is a decline of you as a person, but to hold to the integrity of the structure of this talk. So I think what's coming to me is that maybe the invitations that you consistently and constantly keep making may not be landing onto people as negotiables. But as pushes, constant pushes. And knowing you maybe and going back and being in integrity with the wisdom talk format gave me the strength or power or integrity to say that let's honor this and the confidence to do it.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, because the nudging and the boundaries are always, there's an interplay between those, right? The nudges and the boundaries.
Yes, 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 yes. Yeah. I think this is very beautiful, that invitation, you know, to be in touch with, is there an invitation? And one thing I have observed, and you will have to tell me, that at least verbally I do say that I'm okay either way, you know, but whether that verbal thing is actually meant from the depths, you know, and and somewhere there is this, I don't want to use the word learning disability, but challenge, that sometimes I keep going over the same thing, I mean, and ADHD is known as a learning disability. So there seems to be sometimes a loss of patience in a friendship, and it requires an enormity to hold, something. Yeah. But having said that, there is, yeah, so much richness and texture that becomes possible.
I would just say that it's a constant edge that each of us keeps navigating between invitations and boundaries, making invitations, holding boundaries, responding to invitations, and
handling rejections.
So for me, I tend to be on the side of the person who's receiving a lot of invitations. So my routine starting position is no, rather than yes. And of course, invitations are rejected, but there I feel quite foolproof. Working in the not-for-profit sector, you are making invitations all the time, and that hardly even shows up as a rejection for me. But I'm wondering, since we're also in the last few minutes before we open this up for others, that should we pause to helicopter?
Yes, I was about to say that. Yeah.
The 10 minutes or even the hour, in fact.
Yeah. Let's see whatever comes in the next couple of minutes. For me, one thing that I would like to say as a helicopter is that there was an ease, there was an exploration, there was not like a structured, there was a structure, and yet we were allowing the pauses to reveal themselves. And I also found your attentiveness and vigilance of the process and where we were valuable. Like there's a Erav in your being, I see.
Thank you. Yeah. I was happy to see you and us flow, and happy to lean into an unpredictable kind of conversational space. I was also mindful that what was helping us perhaps was hundreds of hours of these conversations that we've had, and that as much as this was fresh, also we've been doing this, and so the energetic imprint of that friendship, and that has evolved, the warmth of that was also very very alive. And I was just also towards the end, when you spoke about ADHD and we couldn't fully go into it, that the courage to talk about learning and to embrace learning while facing a challenge around learning. I think I just am closing with this, that standing out for me vis-a-vis you, right? And your love for learning in face of the challenge that you face. What must it take to cross that and learn? Like, what is that? So I'm left with appreciation for that.
Thank you, Abhi. It's wonderful, and I always am, these days I'm not envious, but sometimes I am, at how you're organized, structured, 21st Wisdom Talk, getting live streamed. So I think I really admire many things about you and the integrity with which you lead your life. And it's been a joy to have this conversation.